did you get into the investment industry and what has been your career progression since then?
I'm sort of a poacher turned gamekeeper. I've done 6 or 7 startups, so I was always the person asking for the money, not the person giving it out. And I think it was only when I realised that any sort of sustainable change that I wanted to try and bring about really required some alignment between sort of my ideas of the way things should be and the interests of the investors, that it sort of dawned on me rather reluctantly that I was going to have to get into the world of investment. And I was in a solar business that was giving free solar panels to people who had lovely big south-facing roofs but maybe didn't have 10 grand to buy solar panels, you know, and sitting across the table from the funding guys. And then the government made a change to regulations, and this is where this idea of Trillion Fund was born, which was like a peer-to-peer lending platform with triple bottom line returns, so people, planet and profit. So that's really when I made the jump and moved into investment, and then realised that actually I needed to understand the regulation, I needed to pass the exams, there was a lot of stuff we had to do. So that led to the Crowdfunding Association, which led to new regulations, which led to an ISA for crowdfunding, and ultimately ended up at Downing.
What challenges have you faced and how did you overcome them?
I wouldn't underestimate how difficult it was to get back into exams, to start doing the Chartered Institute of Securities exams when I was 42, you know, and a mother of 2. It'd been so long since I'd done, you know, an MBA or any other exams. But, you know, if you want to make any change, then I think you have to understand the status quo and why it is the way it is. So there's no point in me marching into the FCA to try and say these regulations are inappropriate and disproportionate if I don't understand what the regulations are. So that was a heck of a thing to get my head round. And interestingly, I think what made the difference is, you know, because it's very, very lonely being an entrepreneur anyway, let alone being one who's trying to drive change. It was in the Crowdfunding Association and those first 12 members where my competitors were actually my peer group. So sometimes you find allies in the strangest places, but we were all trying to grow businesses, but at the same time to leave a lasting impact and to change the industry. So that was really fundamental, I think, in helping me through that learning curve.
Who or what has been most important in supporting you throughout your career?
People. Yeah. So some amazing bosses, Dana Noble, Pat Gaffey, Tony McGing now. I mean, I'm probably not the easiest person to manage. So you have to be a certain kind of CEO to want to work with, you know, an entrepreneur rather than the nice, quiet staffer. And great mentors who've made a massive difference as well. I mean, I think that's the kind of humbling thing, you know, you really need to lean on other people, because if you're the one with the drive pushing the change through, you have to feed your own energy as well. And that's quite a demand, I think, on your network and family.
What advice would you give to a young woman starting in our industry today? What are the most important lessons you've learned?
First of all, please start, because we are a long way away from where we need to be. It's frankly a little bit embarrassing. You know, I think my generation in particular, so those of us who are kind of nudging 50, we had to really compete with the men almost as men. The pictures of me at British Airways in the 80s, you wouldn't believe. I looked like Angela Merkel with my trouser suits and my flat shoes and my strict hair. So it'd be lovely to be able to genuinely contribute a different perspective. And certainly at Downing, we're working really, really hard in that diversity. We can't have, you know, all men panels all the way through. So do get into the industry. Go and find a senior woman and don't move away from her until she agrees to mentor and support. I think sometimes my generation aren't the best at it. But, you know, I think the key thing is just to understand your audience, understand where the differences are, and tailor your approach to that audience. We can't change, you know, subconscious bias all in one go as one individual. What we can do is just accept that it's there, and just make sure that we slightly tweak some of our behaviours, even if the rage is still inside. There's a way of putting it forward which will make sure that what they hear is what you're actually trying to say.
You won the Change Excellence Awards at the Women in Investments Awards. What are you most proud of in terms of your achievements and what contributed to your success?
I don't know, I think it's the industry change is more important than anything else for me. You know, money is kind of the side effect, the byproduct of what we do. It's the means, as it were, not the end. So I love the ISA, to be honest, because when we marched into Treasury and said we'd like our own ISA just for crowdfunding, we didn't really think we were going to get anywhere. But it just, for me, it's fundamental because it means that this idea of investing directly into things, people seeing where their money's going, you know, it being £100 minimum investment, not 10,000, you know, I just can't abide that idea that people who are already rich get opportunities that aren't available to everybody else. Wealth is not a skill set. Just because I'm not particularly rich yet doesn't mean I'm stupid, and just because I'm wealthy doesn't mean I'm the other way around. So I think the ISA is fantastic because it's a real signal that this is actually becoming mainstream and it can potentially be for everyone.
And finally, can you name a well-known woman who has inspired you? They could be inside our industry or in another sector.
So definitely outside the industry, but the main investor at Trillion Fund, which was my P2P platform, was Dame Vivienne Westwood. And she is something of a genius. You know, when she starts to talk, you sort of have to work hard to follow the flow. She's not a linear thinker. She's super, super creative. But she just does not care what anyone thinks whatsoever. She's so principled and so clear, from, you know, getting on her bike in the morning, pulling raw vegetables out of the garden and taking them to the office to eat, to visiting tribes in the rainforest and, you know, rejecting gifts of dresses because she's got plenty of dresses. You know, those 3 or 4 years working together was an absolute inspiration for a woman who has such a clear focus in her mind and has no fear.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
Welcome.